work intersects with the city and the community board, and you were a council member and now you're a congressman. So how do you see the intersection of sort of our local land use issues and the federal programs that you're working on in Congress and, you know, bringing stuff back to the district? Where do those things intersect for you?
Well, the federal government has no role in land use, right? Land use is exclusively the purview of the local government and to a lesser extent the state government. I mean, our principal role is securing funding and then leaving it to state and local government to administer those funds. Of particular relevance, we persuaded Fordham University to apply for environmental justice grants, and Fordham University was selected to administer $50 million in environmental justice grants for the whole Region 2, which includes New York. And so if there are organizations in the Bronx that are looking for opportunities to access those funds, we can arrange for Fordham University to deliver a presentation and inform them about the application process. So,
oh, that's amazing. Yeah. What are the details? What kinds of environmental? Are there?
It's open-ended.
Open.
It's sustainability, it's resiliency, it's greening. It's so broadly defined that, yeah, it's pretty capacious.
And this is part of Biden's Infrastructure Act money?
It's part of the Inflation Reduction Act.
Exactly. Yeah. Right, that was one of our other questions is from the Inflation Reduction Act.
But it's highly unusual, you know, we persuaded Fordham to apply. It's highly unusual for a Bronx-based institution to be the lead for a $50 million grant. I mean, that is unprecedented.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That answered one of our questions. One of the most horrible issues in the Bronx is air quality, and the Cross Bronx Expressway is one of the reasons why we have such horrible air quality in our neighborhoods. And the challenge with fixing the Cross Bronx is it's a federal road and it goes to the city and all that. Can you talk about some of the work you've done on Cross Bronx Expressway and clean air and fixing that?
Yeah, so I have a vision for capping the Cross Bronx Expressway. You know, a wise person once said, the past is not dead, it's not even past. And I feel like nowhere are those words more true than in the Bronx, which continues to be haunted by the ghost of Robert Moses, whose legacy includes the Cross Bronx Expressway. And for me, the Cross Bronx Expressway is both literally and metaphorically a structure of racism. You know, it's left behind decades of disinvestment and displacement and environmental degradation. And every day to and from the Hunts Point Food Distribution Center, believe it or not, there are about 15,000 diesel trucks that travel there. And those trucks create massive congestion on the Cross Bronx, unleashing massive amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. And so if you're a poor kid of color in the South Bronx and you're living near the Cross Bronx, you're breathing in through no fault of your own pollutants that cause you to have respiratory diseases like asthma. It's no accident that the Bronx has the highest rates of asthma in the city of New York. That's not an accident, that's a consequence of the Cross Bronx Expressway. And so we have a vision for capping the Cross Bronx and installing electrostatic filters that would prevent the air pollutants from recirculating in the air. Majority Leader Schumer and I secured about $2 million to conduct a feasibility study to determine, you know, what could be done to reimagine the Cross Bronx Expressway, how much would it cost. That process is going to unfold over the course of 2 years. This is the final year. And once it's done, we're going to be in a strong position to secure funding for the actual capping of the Cross Bronx.
Oh, wow. Is there anything that, you have a lot of activists, community board people, organizational people, is there anything on that topic that anyone in this room could help you do to your office, to Schumer's office, to move that forward?
Look, I think once the feasibility study is complete, then we'll need grassroots activism to secure the actual funding. But so far so good. Yeah.
Is the Department of City Planning Bronx office coordinating that feasibility study?
So it's one of the partners. The lead is New York City DOT, but as I understand, city planning is part of it. Yeah. And New York State DOT is part of it because the Cross Bronx Expressway is owned by the state of New York. Yeah.
And it's I-95.
But it was city DOT that applied for the grant.
Oh, that's great.
And that grant came not from the Inflation Reduction Act, but from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. It's known as a RAISE grant.
Amazing. This group, the Riverdale Nature Preservancy, was very involved in our Greenway conversations. I believe Senator Schumer did feasibility studies a long time ago. Do you have any information or update on a greenway that connects the greenway coming from Manhattan and then picking up again in Westchester and sort of leaving the Bronx out? Any thoughts on that?
I have no update, but I can look into it.
Okay,
Yeah,
that would be great.
absolutely. Yeah, sure.
We would love for it to continue. Okay, let's talk about housing. It's one of your favorite topics, right? So you're obviously a champion of affordable housing and also a strong climate environmental policy advocate. How do you build with both priorities in mind? Do you have any recommendations? We have land use folks in the room. Do you have any recommendations for how to combine and balance those two priorities, either in policy formation or in development?
Yeah, so, look, we're facing the deepest affordability crisis since the Great Depression. The demand for affordable housing far exceeds the supply. By some estimates, we have a shortage of over 6 million single-family homes and over 7 million multifamily rentals. And so there's no escaping the need for development. Like, we are catastrophically underbuilt as a country. Having said that, I am not, and this applies to both housing development and economic development, I'm not instinctively or reflexively pro-development or anti-development. I judge it on a case-by-case basis. So I'll give you an example relating to economic development. As many of you know, the mayor had proposed creating a 20-acre, 34,000 seat stadium, cricket stadium, in the heart of Van Cortlandt Park, presenting it as an economic development initiative, claiming it would create jobs and generate revenue, all of which was true. But if that proposal had gone forward, it would have meant the desecration of one of the crown jewels of New York City, which was Van Cortlandt Park. Like, in my mind, no amount of revenue generation would ever justify desecrating Van Cortlandt Park. And we also took the position that it was a violation of the public trust doctrine. The public trust doctrine holds that parks belong to the public, in the public trust, and that cities like New York cannot deprive the public of parkland without the approval of the state legislature. And if we had allowed the mayor to transfer a significant share of Van Cortlandt Park from the public to a for-profit entity without any environmental review process, without any public review process, that would have set a dangerous precedent. That would have opened the floodgates to the privatization of parkland everywhere in New York City. And so that's an example where the need for environmental protection trumps development. So I think it's a case-by-case basis.
Great, thank you. We were talking a little bit about the Hudson River. There have been long stories of pollution and dredging and not dredging. What options are available for the future of the Hudson River from the federal government's side?
Look, if you want, we can actually, I'm happy to fund a study for the Hudson River. We have community-funded projects where we can actually fund studies. We can arrange for the Army Corps of Engineers to come here and let us know what are the options for improving the Hudson River. So that could be one of the follow-ups from my appearance today.
That's super interesting. We had a lot of discussion before you came about native plants, right? So one of the things connect land use, and if you were still a city council member, you'd say, I do land use, I don't do native. I don't do native plants. We have a lot of people who are focused on native plants. Can you imagine a scenario where the federal government would help sort of trickle down a focus on turning land back to native? I mean, I think you missed Ray poetically talked about connecting, solving the environmental crisis by literally in our soil, connecting the native to the soil and creating a national park. That would be a whole country based on native. Could you imagine a scenario where the federal government would help enforce that kind of a thinking?
I'm not even sure what you're asking.
He's looking.
I think the point of Ray's presentation was that basically each homeowner or each apartment building collectively is forming a national park if you take all those yards and everything and basically combine them into an incredible resource. for the nation with native plants.
With native plants, and if we did that across the country, we would support migration of of birds and bugs and just sort of from the ground up, because we always talk about the missing federal climate policy, but if we also do it all, like the most granular level, we can help it up. All right, maybe we just planted that idea. We'll come back next year. We'll come back next year. Are there any questions? Anyone have questions on cards? Steve, did you have a question?
Cars? Well, this kind of relates to
Okay,
it.
go ahead, ask the question.
I just was wondering, do you guys get involved with the congestion pricing that's been much talked about, and the impact it might have on this area, especially across Bronx and other, where it might divert things, and how that could affect us, and what we're doing to get ahead of it?
Yeah, so I was active. Congestion pricing was inevitability, was gonna happen no matter what, and look, it is a fact that the MTA needs a dedicated revenue stream, and I would argue nothing is more protective of the environment than public transit, so we have an interest in the economic viability of our subways and buses. But I was concerned about the initial environmental assessment showing a diversion of diesel truck traffic from the central business district of Manhattan to the South Bronx. My position was that the South Bronx should not be a dumping ground for the diesel truck traffic from Manhattan. And so the governor did address some of my concerns. She agreed to provide $155 million worth of mitigation measures for the South Bronx. So we're receiving $20 million for an as